Hello there. I am very sorry for all the technical difficulties. It's all part of being an online entrepreneur, I guess. Sorry, Abe. So we've got about 15 more minutes with you, I think. And I'm going to make sure that we are live on here. Yep, I see us now. Okay. So just so you guys know, if you're going to use StreamYard in a group, the person you're interviewing has to be a member of your group, which makes no sense because StreamYard is a third party. But anyway, just so you know, that's the deal. So I got some really awesome stuff from Abe, but unfortunately, you couldn't hear it. So, okay, let's start. Can we start where we left off, Abe?
Yeah, I believe I was just finishing up talking about the iceberg metaphor.
And mindset and why mindset is important and
So,
what it even is.
so the question was, what is mindset? How is that helpful to know about mindset in order to be successful in life and business? You also brought up the example of Tony Robbins that he said, success is what, like 88% mindset and only 12% strategy. So just to recap, pun intended, we have an iceberg, and that basically represents our psychology and our results that we get in our business. And the tip of the iceberg is the results. It's what's seen, right? It's the impact, it's the revenue that we're able to generate. And what's beneath that is the actions that we take, right? So what are the habits, the systems, the strategies that we put in place in order to get a certain result, be that result positive or negative. Now, what underlies that, and that's the area that I work on with clients, is the layer of perspectives. So, how somebody is seeing themselves in the world, what's their worldview, what values do they hold, whether or not they're able to actually even see opportunities. And what belies that is the stories, the narratives that we have deep in our it's usually on a subconscious level. And so Jung, you probably appreciate this, one of my favorite quotes, Jung said that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to dictate the results in our life, and we will call it fate. So if you have an
Mm,
entrepreneur who has a sort of belief about themselves that, no matter what I do, marketing doesn't work, or, I'm just not good at sales, or whatever it is, then they're going to continue to get certain results in their life because that belief, that story is playing out on an unconscious level. They might be aware and cognizant, I just don't get the results I want, but they don't know why they're not getting those results. Whereas some other person is employing the right strategies or employing the same strategies but getting different results because they're approaching it from a different standpoint. So having an awareness, just to wrap this up, having an awareness of our own psychology, having an awareness of the decisions that we're making in our business is super important so that we can make better decisions and achieve a result that's more in alignment with our deepest desire, which is to grow and have impact.
I do find, thank you so much. I do find it so interesting that you can take two entrepreneurs
Yeah,
and they have the same resources,
right.
and one really, really struggles and the other doesn't. And
Right.
I hear you saying that part of it is what underlies the beliefs, that what we do with that information really has to, and resources really has to do with what we believe about ourselves.
Right. And I think here's the other component to it, and this is what starts to bring in the energetic piece. And just for people that didn't hear us, what I do is mindset and performance coaching. So I help entrepreneurs to develop more awareness of their mindset and be more choiceful on the energy that they're bringing forward. And so what's really interesting is that to be an entrepreneur means to go outside of your comfort zone. The actual word entrepreneur means to undertake. So you're undertaking this great endeavor. You're undertaking a hero's journey, if you will, if you're into Joseph Campbell, and you're leaving the mundane reality. You're leaving what is known, what is comfortable. And it's impossible to do it in theory, but not actually do it in practice. In other words, it's impossible to have success without practice, the practice of doing what's uncomfortable. And so a lot of people think, well, let me just get into entrepreneurialism and whatnot, but I don't want to put myself out there. I don't want to do live streams. I'm not really good with sales and whatnot. And so naturally it's going to be very difficult for these people to succeed because they're not actually stretching the limits of what is known for them or stretching the limits of their own comfort and really going beyond because they, naturally we want to stay safe. We want to stay protected. It's dangerous. It's like scary to put ourselves out there, but it's impossible to be successful and to not be visible.
Totally. 100%.
Yeah.
So scary. So Abe, how do we, and you mentioned the
Yeah.
energy work. How do we make the unconscious conscious, and what does energy work? How can energy work help with that?
So two ways. One is you put yourself out there and you see what comes up for you, right? Because it's one thing to say, "Oh
Mm,
yeah, no, I could do that, no problem," and then you actually come face to face with doing the thing, and it's like all of a sudden you start feeling all sorts of stuff in your body. And what's really interesting, so we were talking before about money, sex, and power, and those are areas of our life that bring up a lot of shame and a lot of guilt for people, and that people have all sorts of feelings around. And so when it comes into a certain situation where you're tapping into that energy, there's this sort of lack of a capacity to be able to hold that energy, and we end up dispersing it. We end up doing different things. Like we try to numb out, we watch TV, we run away, we get distracted, we end up doing the laundry instead of doing the sales calls, whatever it is, right? So part of it is actually putting yourself in the situation and seeing what comes up and then realizing, oh my God, I have work to do, right? So it's just trial and error. Now, the other part of it is actually getting in, what do you call it? Like being in the environment of somebody who's miles ahead of you, a mentor or coach, somebody who can say, okay, this is what you need to do. This is where you're stopping yourself, right? And here's your material. Here's what's coming up for you, right? You're not getting on those sales calls because you have this idea that, or you have this subconscious belief that nobody's going to want to buy your stuff, right? Or that you're not worth it, or whatever the story is. And so having somebody who knows what they're talking about and can see what we can't see because it's in our blind spot, and bring that out for us to look at and to confront and to face will shave years off of our journey, right? It'll help to accelerate that process.
Oh my God. So many bombs in that. I am not being dramatic. Seriously, there are so many bombs in that. I could give you 5 examples for
Mm,
me today,
mm,
um, where oh my gosh, this is just so gelling. So you don't really know what's in your unconscious until you actually challenge yourself to do the thing
right.
that's going to bring it up to your conscious, to your awareness.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
to say it is so, yeah, I'll do lives every day. And then you
Right.
sit down to do a live and you're like frozen,
Right.
right?
Yeah, sure. Are you speaking from personal experience?
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm used to being, in the therapy room by myself with one client, not
Mm,
for all to see.
sure.
Also, the connecting with people who are doing the things who are ahead of you.
Mm,
It doesn't mean they're better than you, it means they're ahead of you. And being part of a community and how important that is.
yep. Mm,
Awesome.
yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned in your body, like we feel it in our bodies.
Yeah.
And I definitely felt it when, this whole thing, actually, this is a really good, what happened with us a few
Hmm.
minutes ago
Hmm.
for me was like, I just wanted to go, I'm at home. I just want to go to my bedroom and put the covers over my head. And I felt that in my body,
Yep.
like it in my chest. I kind of still feel it.
Hmm.
So, breath work and body work. Can you
So
speak to that a little bit?
before I get into breath work, uh, so we are not used to feeling sensation in our body. It's it's very uncomfortable. And most people haven't really done the work to grow their ability to hold sensation to its max capacity. And so whenever we start to feel a lot of sensation, be it electricity, be it, whatever it is, we have a tendency to disperse it, right? A lot of people, and we're also we live in a society that's just set up to numb us the hell out, whether it's, pharmaceuticals. I mean, by the time you're 16, you've seen, I think the statistics say like, six figures, multiple hundreds of thousands of pharmaceutical commercials by the time you're a teenager.
Oh,
Or
wow.
it's crazy, it's ridiculous. So
Wow.
so there's shopping, there's Netflix, there's food, there's many different ways that people numb out sensation.
Hmm.
So, breath work is one of the most powerful practices that I've come across that allow you to expand your capacity to hold those energetic resources, the hold the sensation, the feeling. So, for instance, when you're in a very confrontational conversation, part of the reason why we avoid that is because it's intense, right? It brings up so much, whether it's a confrontation, an intervention with a loved one, or it's a sales conversation with somebody who, you know, there's like lots of money on the line, right? And for them to make that commitment is it's a huge commitment, right? It's a very powerful decision. And a lot of people want to do that in hiding. So, for instance, in a sales conversation, you'll find people a lot of times saying, well, let me think about it. Let me do this. And they try to get away from the intensity of making a decision with the hopes and the ideas and the thinking, well, if I have time to process it, it's not going to be so intense, right? I can kind of like allow myself to be comfortable. But actually, the most powerful decisions are not supposed to be comfortable at all. And because we're constantly seeking comfort, that's the reason why we are stuck, whether it's in our life, in our relationships, in our business, and we keep repeating the same patterns because we keep seeking that comfort. And so to be a salesperson who can hold the sensation of somebody who's having an experience, somebody really liked when I used that terminology the other day. Somebody's having an experience, and that's all it is. They're just having an experience. But because I've done the work and I practice something like breath work, I'm not having my own experience or having a sort of reaction or a trigger response to them getting triggered, where it's just like, where we're doing this dance and nobody wants to like, and I'm actually able to just be clean and clear and hold a very powerful presence. And that is something that's very uncommon that we see in human interactions. And being able to have the physiology for it is absolutely 100% crucial. So, breath work is a practice that I've come across in the last few years, which is totally different than yoga and meditation because I've been doing yoga meditation for 20 years. But breath work is an active breathing technique where you breathe deep down into your diaphragm, and there's different variations of it. But the ultimate result is that it just clears away the anxiety, the fear, the doubt, the worry. What happens from a psychological, actually a scientific standpoint, is that the brain enters into what's called transient hypofrontality, where the part of your brain that's constantly talking trash, like, you ain't shit, or like the critical part of your brain, or, that part that's just like you're stuck in your head and you're constantly like just ruminating and going over your sort of neuroses, that part shuts down. And what's left is this sort of just clear headed, um, clarity, focus, and absolute certainty, which is probably the most powerful thing that we can access as entrepreneurs, as people who are making bold decisions in our life.
So, would you say there's something really powerful about letting it out to allow other things to come in, like the release? Because I've done breath work with you, and it's like the release of, it's like things come, I mean, you obviously take oxygen in, but
Mhm.
there's also this very physiological release.
Right. Well, like I was saying before about money, sex, and power, there's a lot of shame and guilt wrapped up with those things. And so we tend to hold things in, we tend to hold things back, right? It's the old, It's like Freud's id, superego. It's like we have these parts of us, of our human nature, that want to be expressed, but we have this controlling part of us that's saying, no, 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 it's not right. Don't be angry. Don't be sexual. Don't be this. Don't be that. And we don't vent it. We don't ventilate it. And so we hold on to this stuff all of our life. And what happens in the breath work is that all of a sudden you have permission. And not only that, you don't even, I mean, there's always a choice, but like when you shut down that part of your brain that's constantly controlling and holding back and being reserved and being civilized, and you just let it out, you're facing, you're facing and you're feeling, you're actually confronting, as opposed to numbing out, as opposed to finding other ways to not have to feel whatever it is, the anger, the sadness, the depression, even the joy, the happiness, the love, whatever it is that wants to be expressed and wants to come out and doesn't get a chance in normal waking life, all of a sudden it has the opportunity. And so the end result is that you just have a clear-headed feeling, a lightness within yourself. The anxiety, the fear, the doubt, the worry, the frustration just kind of evaporates for a little bit, and what's left is just this sense of being and purpose, which is why entrepreneurs love it and take to it so much.
Yeah, and I can totally vouch that is exactly how I feel after I've had that experience, that it just comes up
Yeah.
and there's a clearing, and the coming up isn't pretty. It's not like, we see pictures of people do, and I do yoga too, like of this peaceful calm. For me, it's like a lot
Yeah.
of just emotion that I've been suppressing, not even consciously suppressing.
Yeah.
And so then it's like a release, and then I can turn my attention towards something in business or life, because it's all the same,
Right.
and really be there and really focus on it.
Right. Yeah. Totally. That's
And I
it.
think most people haven't had the opportunity to experience that. And I really want women in this group to have the opportunity to experience that. And maybe you and I can talk about, after our call at another time, how, you might be able to offer that in our group, to have that kind of experience,
Right.
because it's really powerful.
We are doing online breathwork sessions, which, it's not the same as being in person, but people have reported just having really powerful experiences even in the online space as well. And so we have one coming up on Thursday. So I'd love to invite, if anybody is interested, if they want to drop a comment below, we can follow up and give a link to register and join us this coming Thursday.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've done one of your online
Right.
uh
Okay. Right.
experiences,
So how was
and
it for you?
it was great.
Yeah.
It was
Okay.
it was I mean, it wasn't like being in person, but it was still great.
Good.
And um Abe uh, Abe's wife Soraya are their team, and she's awesome at holding the space and coaching you, and you sort of set your camera up so they can Abe and Soraya can see you doing the breathing, so they'll coach you if they see something, to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Usually, like me, I'm not like going fast enough. Um, so can we squeeze in one more question?
Yes. And then I gotta jump off.
Okay. Okay. So for women in particular,
Yeah.
we tend to really take a lot of responsibility for a lot of different things, like everything.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of busyness and rushing and things like that. So can you give us any advice on how to manage that so we can focus on our work or one thing at a time?
Um, yeah, if we had more time, I'd love to talk about the masculine and feminine, how that plays out in business and relationship. Um, but the question is, how can we, if we're rushing and we're holding a lot of different things, how can you repeat the question?
How can we really be in the moment
Hmm.
so we can be more mindful and focus on just give ourselves permission to focus on just one thing at a time?
Mm-hmm. Um, well, I have a different approach to that. My wife always says when she's checking her phone and talking to me at the same time, she says, "It's okay, I'm a woman."
Exactly.
And it's true. Actually, the masculine, and here's the thing, just real briefly, masculine and feminine exist both in male, female. That doesn't, right? I mean, women have a
Hmm.
tendency to be more in their feminine, men have a tendency to be more in their masculine, but it's not uniform. Um, the feminine has an energy that's sort of spread out. Like one of my coach's wives, she describes it as, if you're cleaning the house, you're like working here, and then you're checking the mail, and then you're drinking coffee, and then you're watching TV, then you're on the phone, and like that's like being in your feminine. You're doing all these different things at one time. Whereas the masculine has like this sort of, if you're talking about yoga, it's like this dristi, this like concentrated focus, right? And it's just like focusing on one thing, done. Focus on the other thing, done. So everybody works differently. I personally have a more sort of feminine approach in that I find it very difficult to focus only on one thing. I have to do multiple different things. Um, so I think there's a conversation before we get to how do you focus on one thing. There's a conversation around what actually works best for you. How are
Oh,
you?
yeah.
How are you most productive? Because if you can get a lot done in that way, or if you can structure your day in such a way that accommodates your work style, I think great. You don't have to change your whole entire life and become a different human being. I mean, what works for, Andrew Cruzy doesn't necessarily work for me, but it doesn't matter. Like what the end result is what matters, right? And so it's a matter of really figuring out how can I work within my work style in order to get to where I need to be. And if I need to incorporate other things, okay, fine, but without having to sacrifice my whole entire life and happiness. I think it's a bit of a deeper conversation, but what I would say, which is, it sounded like your question was two parts. One is work style, and the other is if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed,
Hmm.
kind
Yeah.
of come down.
Hmm.
So certainly breath work is certainly powerful for that, because what it does is it's like a pattern interrupt. It interrupts the sort of, what happens is when you're overwhelmed, think of a crying baby, a hungry baby, or a tired baby. The baby just really needs to sleep, right? But it can't sleep. So it's feeling unsettled. And because it's unsettled, it can't sleep. And so it just kind of gets into this pattern, this loop. And so when we're stressed and overwhelmed and overworked, then it's hard to slow down, and we get more stressed and overwhelmed. And it makes me so like we're just in this pattern. And the breath work, what it does is it just sort of like erases your hard drive, right? It just sort of like clears everything and just brings you back to like a blank slate, where then you can be more choiceful. And one of the techniques that I teach is just a real quick inhalation, 3-part breath. So stomach, chest, upper chest. So it's like just in a quick release. And I just build it up, right? Just like that, just like keep building it up, and then just let it out. Like if there's stress and tension, just like just let it out. Whatever
Love
needs to
it.
come out comes out, and then just hold the oxygen out, feel a little bit of the buzz, and then deep breath in. And if you do it properly, I kind of sped through it there for time, but if you do it properly, it's a great way to just sort of reset the clock, break through the brain fog. And it only takes about 30 seconds, 1 minute, maybe even 2 or 3 rounds if that's what's necessary. But that's enough to break the cycle and give you the opportunity to start over with a new state.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Awesome. Thank you so much.
my pleasure. I'm glad we
By
got.
the way,
Yeah,
if you decide to do that, like you can get a little bit dizzy, right? And that's normal.
that's totally normal. If you're too dizzy, obviously you want to sit down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
my
Sorry
pleasure.
for the technical issues.
That's okay. It's all part of life.
Yep.
And like I said, if somebody wants to join us Thursday, I'd love to invite people from this group. We could send you the link, and then you can have your VA just to give it to people. So if people want, they could just do hashtag breathwork, and we can send the link. Is that cool?
Yeah, I will set that up with Susan, my
Okay,
VA, and she will post it in the group. And I actually didn't know about that either. So that'll be good for me to know about.
yeah, yeah, we're getting the word out. So,
Okay.
all right,
Great, Abe.
I gotta
Have a
run.
great day. Say
Yes,
hi to Soraya.
will do. Be well.
Bye.